Hello and welcome to this session about HCL Digital Experience and its new Helm-based deployments. My name is Tim Petela and I'm the Chief Architect and Lead Developer of the HCL DX development team. So what I'm going to talk to you about is two pieces. First of all, I'm going to briefly touch on some of the preparations that are necessary to be able to run a Helm-based deployment. And second of all, I'm going to give you a quick demo about how easy it is to actually run the Helm-based deployment, how to do some configuration changes, and also show you how HCL DX is up and running in Kubernetes using Helm. The preparations that are necessary are mainly the download of the HCL DX package from FlexNet. You need to unzip the package, you need to load the contained Docker images into your container registry, into your local container registry. You need to adapt the names or the tags of the Docker images appropriately so that they fit your private container registry. And then actually last but not least, you need to push these to your container registry, actually to the registry that's accessible from your Kubernetes environment. And this is actually already everything you need to do before we now jump into the demo that I prepared for you. Therefore, I'm going to jump over into my terminal to show you how things are being done. So I prepared here a minimal Kubernetes setup that is already running in the background, and I can show you that in a minute. But first of all, I want to just show you everything I sort of need to get the installation going. So what I have here is, first of all, the HCL DX deployment package that contains the Helm chart. And I also prepared a sort of a minimal deployment YAML here that sets configuration so that DX can run on a really minimal footprint. So let's briefly look into the minimal deployment YAML that I prepared. What that YAML file here contains is really the minimal necessary configuration to get your deployment going and to get the configuration that you are interested in particular in is being applied. There's a bigger sort of overall values YAML contained in the Helm chart in the DX deployment tar.gz file that contains all the different settings that are possible, but you yourself only need to have a minimal values YAML that only contains the changes that you want to apply. So as you can see, what I did here is I already pushed the Docker images to some container registry that we internally, the DX development team internally uses. And this is already pointing to all the different versions of the different components. So different Docker image versions actually. And then we have configuration here to enable or disable certain modules. We have scaling configuration. There's resource configuration. Actually, that means that you decide on how much resources, CPU and memory, minimum and maximum, you will give to the individual services. As I said, this is a very minimal configuration now here, just so that this runs on a small footprint for this demo. And then there's volume configuration, right? So DX uses a set of volumes that are used for different things, different use cases, and also have different semantics. For example, the profile volume of your DX core instance that contains the WP profile WAS profile needs to be read-write many, so that means this volume is shared across multiple pods. Whereas the transaction log and also the log volume of the same pod is read-write once. meaning that each and every pod will have its own volume. And that already concludes the minimal setup here. Actually, some of the settings here are also default settings. I just put them in the minimal YAML file here so that I can show them to you. So one more thing I wanted to show you is that I already prepared the volumes that I'm gonna need, or that we are gonna need to deploy DX. Actually, you just saw in the values YAML file that there is quite a bunch of volumes configured. Some are read write once, some are read write many. And what I'm going to do here is just show you that I, in my kube environment here now, just created some local volumes here that Kubernetes will use to fulfill the persistent volume claims that the DX deployment needs. Let's just have a look at the whole Kubernetes cluster, just to show you there's really nothing in there. I'm also gonna look into the namespace that we are actually gonna create, or actually gonna use for our deployment. But as you can see, there's nothing in there yet. All right, that being said, let's make sure that we have the namespace created. Our namespace is now called DXNS. Let's also make sure that we have a Ingress certificate in our cluster that we can use for our Ingress controller later on. I just copied over some self-signed certificates that I just created. For you, in your case, that will most likely always be non-self-signed certificates, and I'm going to apply them to the cluster here. And that is already all we have to do to prepare our deployment. What I'm going to do now is actually just launch the Helm installation itself. As you can see, we are referencing the namespace, we are referencing the minimal deployment YAML, and we are also referencing the Helm chart. So there's some deprecation warnings there, because in some places we are still relying on some features that are a bit outdated in Kubernetes terms, nothing to really care about. And as you can see, the deployment was quite fast, and it stops with telling that basically the deployment was done, and we can now go ahead and look into the environment. So what I'm going to do first is look at what happened now. Well, there's no resources in the default namespace, obviously, because we installed into the DXNS namespace. Therefore, I'm gonna look into that. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of things going on now. A lot of containers are being created, and that actually means that containers are being pulled and actually now being created inside Kubernetes. So we need to wait for some minutes. So I'm going to pause here and fast forward until all the containers got successfully downloaded and also created. Some minutes later now, the containers should be downloaded, pods should be started, and basically DX should already be running. Let's take a look at how, first of all, Kubernetes itself is looking like. I'm going to look at pods in our namespace and see there, like you can see there, everything is up and running. All the pods actually that make a whole DX deployment are up and running. Let's also take a closer look at sort of all the different resources that are available in our namespace here. That starts obviously again with the different pods. Then you can see services that are being created or have been created. You can see the different apps, different replica sets, and also different stateful sets that got created. So with that, I actually want to jump over into the UI to give you a glimpse into that the installation was really successful. So let's move over there. And I mean, as I told you before, I mean, we installed using self-signed certificates, so we get this security warning here. Let's just visit the website here. There we are. So I'm gonna quickly log in. And there you go. There's HCL DX up and running. So I'm not going to go into any details, any of the new functionalities. There's other demos, other sessions that will tell you a lot about that. But let's go back for a minute into the command line. So the last thing I want to show you is how easy it is to look into logs and to get a sort of closer feeling of what's going on in the environment. Therefore, I'm going to kubectl again to get all the pods that are running in our DXNS namespace. And I'm going to copy the name of the core pod. Actually, it's just the one core pod here. And I'm going to look into the pod log file actually. There you go. There you can see that's the normal in quotation marks DX core log file, and everything seems to be running quite fine. No errors, no exceptions. Everything set up as we wanted. So that concludes the demo. I hope I could give you a good idea of how easy and simple it is now to install HCL DX in your Kubernetes environment using the Helm-based deployment option. Thanks for your attention. Don't hesitate to reach out if there's any question.